Hello there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Jedi Nights, the official and only Star Wars podcast for JoyClicks. I'm your host, Christian Buckley, joined across the HoloNet by my Chewy Mike Connors.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say just official Star Wars podcast.
The official... Hey, I'm not Anthony Carboni.
No.
I want his job, kinda, but...
Oh, who would... Yeah, that would be cool. Which one... So, who would be Anthony Carboni and who would be Andy Gutierrez? I feel like I would be Andy Gutierrez.
I could see that. I could see that for sure.
Definitely.
So, Anthony, watch out.
Literally. Yeah, he's coming for you, man.
33 episodes deep.
Yeah, Star Wars show ain't got nothing on this.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Good.
Still living this pandemic life, but honestly, it's just become so normal.
Yeah, it has. Have fallen off the Old Republic train the past week just because I've been trying to catch up on The Last of Us before Part 2 comes out. But other than that, not much Star Wars content being consumed lately for me.
Right.
You mentioned to me before the show that you just finished the second Thrawn book for the new canon.
Yeah, it only took me like 2 years. But, I finished Thrawn Alliances yesterday. So I had read the first Thrawn, new canon book, probably, in 2018 or 2017, and liked it enough that I was, interested in the next book, because Thrawn Alliances basically, tells two separate stories, one in, the Clone Wars and the other during the Galactic Civil War.
Okay.
Where Thrawn has basically it tells the stories of Thrawn's interaction with Vader at the same time that it tells the story of Thrawn's interaction with Anakin. So it's pretty cool. I definitely liked Thrawn Alliances much better than I liked the first one. Timothy Zahn is a great writer. I never read the earlier Legends Thrawn books, so I don't not much to compare it to, other than Star Wars Rebels, but. It was a pretty good book. I recommend it. Now I'm moving on to Queen's Shadow.
Do you know, is that one about Amidala?
Yeah, it was free on May 4th. So
sick.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I still have to take the plunge on Star Wars books. Master and Apprentice is the one I was eyeing because I love Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. So
that one looks good.
Yeah, honestly, maybe at one point we do a book club. We do a little roundup episode.
Honestly, I'd be super down to do that.
Yeah, I have to read more. We were talking about that too.
Dude, oh man. Yeah, we should start a Star Wars book club.
I'm down. One episode a month, just a book.
Yeah, let's do it.
Look out for that, maybe. We do have some news to discuss though, Mike, in the world of Star Wars.
It wouldn't be the JoyClick Star Wars show, Jedi Nights, without some news.
You're right, and it wouldn't be if that news was not related to The Mandalorian.
Yeah, it's basically, yeah. We're like the Mandalorian podcast.
Pretty much, yeah. That's what we've been coasting on these last few weeks.
Yeah, there's just been so many rumors and so much news coming out of it. So
yeah, so we have another rumor, according to Slash Film, as a follow-up to a story we covered last week about Timothy Olyphant being cast in Season 2. Potential spoilers for his role if you want to stay super blackout, skip ahead 5 minutes. It's been revealed by a report from Slash Film that Timothy Olyphant will be wearing Boba Fett's armor in Season 2 after the rumors recently that he'd be a character playing a role in Season 2 of this series here. Now, the article from Star Wars Newsnet goes on to reference the fact that in the book Star Wars Aftermath, there's a character named Cobb Vanth who acts as a sheriff on Tatooine and wears the armor. Mike, if you had to bet, if you were a betting man playing a game of Sabacc.
Okay, yeah. Not Sabacc.
Sabacc. I'm from New England. That's how we pronounce it in the region.
yeah, I'm good.
You're a New Yorker over here. Yeah, what do you think? Do you think this is likely? Do you think he could just be Tom Hardy stormtrooper role of I'm just wearing the suit? What do you think they hired him for?
Well, I mean, the show is The Mandalorian, so it's possible that he's just like wearing some like random set of Mandalorian armor. Like I don't know why people are automatically thinking it's Boba Fett, though I do see how someone could think so because he's on Tatooine.
Sure.
But that really just begs the question of like, how did he even get that? If it is Boba Fett's armor, how did he get it in the first place?
Yeah, I don't, like I just mentioned with our book talk, I haven't read any of the books. I'm not super familiar with the content in the books. I don't know if Aftermath goes into that, of how Vanth got the armor. But here's where my mind went immediately, because we also talked about recently Tamara Morrison coming back to play what we presumed to be Boba Fett in Season 2. I think they could go a direction that kind of lines up with fan theories that existed for Boba Fett for a while. Remember when I think it was the Josh Trank Boba Fett movie that was planned?
Yeah, well, that was like a really long time ago.
Yeah, so when that came out, I'm pretty sure people were running, like prequel haters were running with the idea of like, oh, so what if like the clone version of Boba Fett actually died in the Sarlacc pit, and then some other cool guy got the armor and then carried on the mantle of Boba Fett.
Oh, interesting. So like Boba Prime dies.
Yeah. So like, what if though? I could see, this is where my mind went. Like, we have sort of a hybrid of that, where like Timothy Olyphant finds the armor basically maybe spit out by the Sarlacc, and wears it. Right, goes throughout Tatooine acting like the second coming of Boba Fett, and
I'm the sheriff. I'm the sheriff of Boba Fett, baby.
Yeah. Tamara Morrison Boba Fett actually does climb out of the pit and is trying to hunt down this guy that stole his armor, maybe.
Oh, like he wants his armor back.
Yeah, like you're sullying the great name of Boba Fett, the man who died by someone who lost their eyesight.
Yeah.
Tarnishing my name.
Literally, like, I think it would be a cool, like, subplot to, like, have Boba Fett try to, like, get his armor back. That would be a very cool... Because I always wanted, like, canon Star Wars to delve into... I always wanted canon Star Wars to delve into, like, Boba Fett escaping the Sarlacc. And I think that would be a cool opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I think there's potential there to tell an interesting story that maybe isn't what we expected.
I mean, it makes me wonder, though, like, if Timothy Olyphant's going to be donning, like, Boba Fett's armor, right? Like, say that it is Boba Fett's armor. That begs the question of, like, what is Tamora Morrison doing, right? Like, if he's not going to be playing Boba Fett, then he's most certainly playing, like, either some clone trooper or Rex.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much a deadlock. And after the speculation and pretty much confirmation that Ahsoka is going to be in Season 2, would make sense for Rex to be with her, I guess, right? After where we see them leave off in Clone Wars and obviously forming that tight bond that carries through Rebels, I would assume post Episode 6 they'd still be, like, palling around, you know?
Yeah, I would probably assume so. I could see it happening both ways. There's also no reason why, like, he couldn't play both characters.
Oh yeah, like, they're clones. He played hundreds of them in Attack of the Clones, you know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
I guess that's kind of like restrictive thinking, especially since you realize that he's a clone. So
yeah. So we'll see how that shakes out. I'm hopeful that they don't. I'm hopeful they do something cool with Boba Fett, because, as we've talked about before, neither of us are really impressed with his resume.
No, and Clone Wars animated Kid Boba definitely didn't help.
No, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
There is another small nugget of news, again following up a story from earlier this year we touched on. And it's a little bit of behind the scenes about Star Wars Underworld.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite stories that we covered, because it was so cool to, like, watch that video.
Yeah.
But yeah, continue with the news. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead. Honestly, why don't you just quickly lay the scene? What happened earlier this year with Underworld?
Oh, yeah, so some person. Did we ever get confirmation about like who this person was or anything?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so just like some random person on the internet posted like this Google Doc with a bunch of information about what the Underworld TV show was supposed to be.
Hmm.
Um, I'm like the details of like the Google Doc are escaping me.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you looked at it, Christian.
It was basically a show Bible. Like, it showed what characters would appear,
Okay.
the era it would span, the sort of in-universe lore about what would be covered on the show. But they
Right.
also leaked some test footage as well.
Yeah, it was a bunch of footage from what seemed to be like the Coruscant Underworld,
Hmm.
and it was pretty cool. It was probably like 6 minutes in total, like 6 or 7 minutes, right?
Yeah, it was under 10.
Yeah, definitely under 10 minutes. It was definitely crude. You know, they didn't do much to it. But yeah, it was interesting, and it kind of like showed like what the tone of the series may have been like. Definitely like violent and like gritty,
Hmm.
um, which is kind of interesting when you look at something like Rogue One. We kind of see that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it was one of the cooler things that came out in terms of like news this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's exciting because in this age of Disney Plus, where we're getting live action Star Wars as a series, looking back to what the original first live action Star Wars series was intended to be, I think is a fun comparison.
Yeah.
But the news today, coming from a interview with Collider, writer Ronald D. Moore, who worked on Star Trek First Contact and The Next Generation, gave a little bit of information about what it was like working in pre-production on the show. Interesting nuggets about Lucas here. So I'll just read through his quote.
Yeah.
Quote, I was one of several writers. There was a bunch of international writers they assembled. We would gather up at Skywalker Ranch once every 6 to 8 weeks, and we would break stories together, and right after we'd go off and write some drafts and bring them back, and George would sit down and critique them, then do another draft and break more stories. It was a lot of fun. It didn't happen ultimately. We wrote, I'd say, somewhere between 40 to 48, something like that, scripts. The theory was George wanted to write all the scripts and get them done, and then he was going to go off and figure out how to produce them. He wanted to do a lot of cutting edge stuff with CGI and virtual sets. Mandalorian.
Mm.
And what happened was we wrote the scripts, and George said, "Okay, this is enough for now. I'll get back to you. I want to look into all the production aspects." Further in the interview, he basically said, George told them, "Write the episodes as big as you want, and we'll figure out the budget later."
That's so funny.
Yeah. So what's your biggest takeaway from that, I guess, in terms of pre-production? It's interesting to see sort of like what you said with Rogue One and the talking about cutting-edge digital sets, seeing Star Wars continue down that path with The Mandalorian, as we saw.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely just shows that George Lucas, man, he's just been like so ahead of the game for so long. Like he's been just like spouting like all of these like interesting new like visual avenues like years before they become a reality.
Yeah.
And probably like a big part of the reason why like Underworld didn't work out was because like the technology just wasn't as feasible back in whenever they were producing it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really cool, like you said, to see like the similarities between like what he envisioned and like what Star Wars actually became, because a lot of the things that he wanted to do ended up becoming a reality with the Mandalorian.
Yeah, and I have to wonder if when this story originally broke about the leaked footage and show Bible, we talked about if we'd be seeing the influence of Underworld in future Star Wars shows or Mandalorian.
It seems like we've already have.
Yeah, for sure, because we know that Favreau consulted with Filoni and Lucas before doing The Mandalorian, so I have to wonder what the extent of that was, like if he gave Favreau the idea of using the digital sets, or if Favreau's experience was something like Jungle Book and Lion King using VR to shoot sort of led him to looking into more technology that was experimental like that. It's just really interesting stuff to me personally.
It is. I would probably assume that for Jon Favreau, like a lot of that came. Honestly, all right. Let's think about this. When did like Jon Favreau start directing like those movies for Disney? Like,
Well, I mean, he technically he started Iron Man in '08, but that was still Paramount, and then he did Iron Man 2 around the Disney purchase. But the first Disney production he did was, I believe, Jungle Book, and I think that was 2016. I can double check that.
all right, so here's the theory. All of this technology that they used on The Mandalorian was all Lucasfilm technology that George Lucas was producing, and then when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they used it on other stuff.
Oh, the VR stuff? You mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Huh. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure ILM is credited. I mean, they're credited for like every single movie that comes out now, but
Yeah, but like think about this. George Lucas probably had this idea for the Underworld TV show and was like, "Oh, like I need to create all this new technology to, make my vision whatever, to complete my vision." But realized the R&D on like creating like all this stuff back in 2008 was a lot and it would take a long time. And by the time, ended up selling Lucasfilm. So
yeah, that's actually really interesting. I wonder what the influence was there, because I believe you told me that the same sort of VR camera technique was also used in Rogue One for the space shots.
yeah, I feel like that was just the logical. Like I don't know if it was just like an earlier version of it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it may have just been like we haven't perfected like the 360 screen that like Mandalorian uses, but we have perfected like this this AR or VR whatever. I don't know.
It's super interesting stuff, and I would love to see sort of a retrospective book written about the production of this show, or just more inside stuff on Lucasfilm R&D personally, because it's really interesting.
I mean, you gotta like how like while George Lucas was there, I would assume that he probably put a lot of capital into making sure that he is on the cutting edge of these things.
I mean, you would think so, right? Because like that was the whole point of the prequels, right? Like using green and blue screen and CG sets and stuff like that. Like even with the original Star Wars, how groundbreaking it was for effects, and his disappointment with the sequels of like there's nothing new. Like the sequel trilogy didn't really do anything dramatically new filmmaking wise, and that was I remember a big quote that was shared around. So yeah, I'm sure ILM was definitely a big passion of his, after like all things aside, because like he did THX stuff and all that. So
yeah, I mean, it's just interesting to think about like what sort of technology they were able to create like under his leadership, but we never were able to see come into fruition like under his creative directorship. But yeah,
sure. I want to see more things use the 360 screen stuff. I'm really curious to see how it influences other productions like the Marvel Disney shows, future Star Wars stuff. Very interested.
The thing is like you don't even like, it's so seamless. Like
yeah,
it's ridiculous, man.
It's very impressive.
It is.
You know what else is impressive and was at the time, still is today?
What's that?
The Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, very impressive today.
I believe last week was the 15th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the day we recorded, or the day after, and we didn't even realize it. But
I think it was like the day after, yeah.
Yeah, same week, 40th anniversary of Empire.
Right.
So, I guess. We can update the that Rotten Tomatoes thing.
Oh yeah.
The tournament. So, man, the prequels got hit hard. People caught on. There's speculation on strings being pulled behind the scenes. Angry people jumping in on the fact that Revenge of the Sith beat Avengers Endgame, and then pushing Dark Knight Rises further in.
Rotten Tomatoes Strikes Back.
Basically. So Empire had to face off against Dark Knight Rises, which did pass Revenge of the Sith in that round.
That's a shame.
Yeah, I can fact check real quick, but I think Empire ran away with it all.
Hmm.
So
Oh yeah, it did.
yeah. Obviously, people still love Empire, right?
Obviously,
You and I believe, to
it
this
actually
day.
it beat out Return of the Jedi for it.
Oh, for the finals,
Yeah.
Jack wouldn't be happy about that.
No, he wouldn't.
But to this day, you and I still rank Empire as number one, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I
So,
love Empire.
me too. On this celebration, I wanted to ask you if you think that Star Wars will ever have another Empire moment. And I guess the way to define that would it be like an I am your father moment, or would it be something more of just a radical shift in the overall vibe and tone of a sequel to a new trilogy? Like, what would you define an Empire moment as a Star Wars fan?
Um, well, I think the whole "I am your father" thing is a little blown out of proportion because it's not really like a twist. It's become such like a cultural moment that like most people know it before they watch it. You know.
Yeah.
Um, I think what made Empire Strikes Back so bold was like its willingness to like be like super dark and like it's pretty like sad honestly
Yeah.
and the rebels like definitely don't win and it's a very grim movie. There's not much like hope in it.
No.
So it makes me wonder like if Disney is going to be like that bold to like create a story that is so like depressing and like defeating. Because I think that's what made it. It's really like what holds the original trilogy together, in my opinion. It has like it carries like the most. Well, I wouldn't say it carries like the most emotional weight, but like it definitely like changes the direction that A New Hope was going in,
Oh yeah.
and adds a lot of like nuance to the overall story. And like I just don't know if I trust Disney to like do that in the sense that they seem like they're afraid to take risks like that.
So, I'll toss this to you next. I think. Well, I guess the next question would be: do you think we actually have already had it? Like, do you think The Last Jedi in 15 years will be looked at in a similar role of like, obviously not having the payoff of Return of the Jedi to follow it up, but shifting tone, shifting direction from the track that was laid out with Force Awakens, not necessarily on a story side, because I think in the few short years that we've had to like talk about this Last Jedi, we've all come to most of us have come to the realization that like the story beats like have sort of a natural progression of what was set up in 7. Like whether or not people were happy or got what they wanted out of those story beats is more up to your own opinion, but in world it kind of makes sense, the choices that were made, right? So like, is the shift in expectations with Last Jedi enough, do you think? Or I don't know, because like within the Star Wars franchise, that's the next example to look at in terms of the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely was trying to be, but I think the choices that Disney made post The Last Jedi kind of like put a damper on it ever being like considered like that, like an Empire moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that.
Like in my opinion, and this is obviously just like what I think about the situation, but they made a really bold choice with The Last Jedi. And it was much different than anything else that we've ever seen. But then they just like reverted back to, you know, fan service and the regular beats in the Rise of Skywalker, and they didn't really like follow through at all with like what The Last Jedi did, in my opinion. I'd like to hear what you think about this, Christian.
So I see where you're going with it, and for the most part, I agree. I don't know if it's if it's necessarily like a Disney thing, or if it's just the weight of Star Wars as a name that's doing it. Like, and what I mean by that is, I think the so much was riding on episode 7, right? Like, so much for this series that I feel like since 7, more people have come around on the prequels, but after the prequels, 7 had to be god tier, you know? Like,
Yeah.
it had to be, and I think that expectation really influenced the rest of the trilogy. And I think on a meta perspective, if you look at the story of like Luke as a legend in 8, I think it's kind of funny to look at it that way, realizing your own sort of pull when it just comes to a name. But yeah, I think to me, Last Jedi is the closest thing without being this is an Empire moment, you know? Because, and I don't think it's a Disney thing, because like I would argue that, again, to me, the closest thing I've seen this century to compare to something like a Empire moment, which is sort of elevated stakes, elevated darker tone, sort of the heroes don't win in the end, is Avengers Infinity War. Like, I feel like Infinity War sort of has the same kind of feeling you walk away from Empire with.
Oh, totally. I've thought that too. And I'm obviously not the only person who has thought that, but like Infinity War has huge, like, I don't know. It reminds me of Empire Strikes Back. But continue. Sorry.
No, yeah, and I don't think it's a Disney thing. I do think it's more of a Star Wars thing, because Infinity War, I think, also had the expectations of like 20 movies before it, right? Like the Marvel name, but it still felt like it fit, but it definitely was darker, and all the deaths at the end, even if you were one of the people that were like, oh, they're gonna come back, like it's still kind of bold to leave it off on a cliffhanger like that for a year.
Totally.
And I think the willingness to go there with it, I think it doesn't make me doubt that we could get an Empire moment in Star Wars again, the way you sort of brought up your hesitation with Disney being the producers behind it. You know, like I do think it's more of there's so much more at stake with Star Wars because of how toxic a lot of the fan discourse can be, that there's only so much wiggle room, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm thinking like with Infinity War it's a little bit different because like Disney took over Marvel sort of like part way through them making the movies, but was generally able to define like the story, the overarching story, and figure out like where exactly they wanted to go with it. Mm-hmm. With Star Wars, it seemed like it was definitely different for Disney because they had all that baggage with, this is going to be episode 7 to like 6 already existing movies, and we have to stay true to them. And there are people who, like you know what I mean? Like there was much more. They had to stay in their lane a little bit more. Yes. So if Disney's able to create, a brand new trilogy of like new characters and like a different timeline, I think they'd definitely be able to have that kind of moment again.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, but I don't think that they can do it in like any sort of, or it'd be hard to do it in any sort of like existing structure that they have.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because our conversation last week about should Star Wars do alternate timelines, I think if we looked at that, I feel like, what you just said and what I was saying about wiggle room, like that kind of goes away. But honestly, I think it's funny we started with The Last Jedi, right? Because, and what you just said about having an original trilogy now, like, I feel like the thing that will get us to our Empire moment again is the Rian Johnson trilogy.
Probably. Yeah, I'm so excited for it, man.
Right? Because, like, think about how bold Last Jedi was. Obviously, there's the open wound for some people because it went directions with characters you've been familiar with forever that you didn't see them going down. But from a blank slate, I feel like there's a lot more potential there of like telling a story that the second chapter of can sort of act as Empire did.
Yeah, he needs like a full 3 movies to just execute a vision, Yeah. Like you can't just like split it up like they did the sequel trilogy. That's a whole other story. but it lends itself to not having these powerful moments like we see in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
That ends up being the outcome, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm mostly with you on all this. Yeah, like, I think even if he doesn't direct all three, if he writes them all, you know, and he produces them all, similar to how Lucas did with the original trilogy, like...
There needs to be a cohesive vision.
Yeah, I think an Empire moment, however you want to define it, is possible again within Star Wars. And I'm hopeful we get there. I just think expectations are the thing that kept the sequel trilogy from having the Empire moment, you know? Because, like, I would even argue that the prequel trilogy didn't have an Empire moment, you know?
No, I think it was just different.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's hard because, like, yeah. No, continue what you're gonna say.
I mean, with the prequel trilogy, just to not, like, cut the sequel trilogy some slack, right? Like, because I still like most of the sequel trilogy. I know you have things you like about it too, but, like, I don't think it's super fair to be constantly looking for an Empire moment because, like we just said, Infinity War is the closest thing to an Empire moment we've had since Empire, kind of. Like, it's kind of hard to achieve.
Oh, it's super hard to achieve, yeah.
And with the prequel trilogy, like, Lucas following it up, like, they rhyme, yeah, but, like, nobody looks at episode 2 the way they look at episode 5, even within that trilogy, right? Like...
Yeah, but I would maybe consider, like, the prequel's Empire moment being, like, episode 3. Doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be in the middle of the story. Like, I don't know. Fair. Like episode 3 is hella dark, man. Like,
yeah.
Like, good guys definitely don't win at the end of that one. you know? So, like, maybe that's its own Empire moment. Like, maybe, like, with each new trilogy, like, you redefine what an Empire moment is. I don't know.
Yeah, like, if we boil it down to its simplest thing, I feel like you could argue that an Empire moment is just something we don't see coming or something very bold, you know? Like, I'm your father and the bad guys losing, or the good guys losing, could be the essence of the Empire moment, you know? So, like, I think you could find that in the prequel trilogy. I think you could easily find that in the sequel trilogy, probably in episode 8, but... Yeah, I'm
it's whether like it carries as much weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. But I'm hopeful. I think it's possible.
Same. It actually makes me think of for the 40th anniversary of Star Wars, like the original Star Wars, they came out with a book called From a Certain Point of View. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with that?
I think I've heard of the existence. I don't know what it's about, though.
It's basically like a collection of like 40 some odd stories about, like, taken from like secondary and like background characters of the original Star Wars and like written by like celebrity writers. Basically, like retelling scenes from Star Wars, like from these characters' point of view.
Interesting.
It's really cool, and like it's funny because like Disney hasn't actually answered the question whether or not the stories are all canon, because they're like, oh yeah, like they're canon from a certain point of view, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but like they're super cool. Like they're cool thought experiments. Like there's just like one about like Tarkin basically like thinking about the Death Star project, and like he brings up director Krennic, and like it's just really interesting, and like I wanted them to do that for Empire Strikes Back, but I haven't heard about that at all. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah, maybe if Celebration is still happening this year in some semblance, maybe we get some sort of Empire 40th treat like that. Like, I'm sure they have something planned this year, you know? Hopefully. Even if it wasn't the week of release, maybe by the end of the year we have some sort of special edition sort of thing to celebrate the anniversary of Empire.
Hopefully.
But talking about anniversaries, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Today, as a recording, is Monday, May 25th, Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what happened Memorial Day 2018?
I mean, I can only guess.
What happened?
I think my guess is right. Do you want me to say it?
Please.
Did Solo release in theaters?
Memorial Day weekend 2018, Solo, a Star Wars story, released.
Wow.
And
the world was changed forever.
It was. Like, honestly, it was.
Yeah.
2 years later, in 2020, I believe it was the Resistance Broadband Network. Is that the
Broadcast?
Broadcast Network?
I think so. I think it's a Resistance Broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So they obviously have the hashtag Make Solo 2 happen, right? They started that a while back.
Mm-hmm.
Today, again, the anniversary of Solo's release, hashtag Make Solo 2 happen is trending again. I believe it's now been called hashtag Make Solo 2 happen day, not within the hashtag, but
yeah. By the time the listeners and watchers see this episode, it's not quite hashtag Make Solo 2 happen day anymore. But
right, but you can still hashtag Make Solo 2 happen.
Oh yeah, yeah. You and I are both very much into making Solo 2 happen.
Oh, absolutely. I knew it so well. Like, I know that you want Solo 2 to happen, that I did an official tweet on the Jedi Nights account at Jedi Nights JC, speaking for both of us that we want hashtag Make Solo 2 to happen.
Oh yeah, no, this is I'm on the record. I like Solo Star Wars story. I want to see a sequel.
Yeah. So I thought what we could do for the rest of the episode is just sort of talk about what we'd want, how we'd want it delivered, what story we'd want to tell, what changes we'd want to see from whatever Solo 2 ends up being. And I guess we could start there. Like, I know we've talked about it before, but what would be your ideal way to receive the story of Solo 2?
Okay, I think we've talked about this just a little bit before.
Yeah.
I don't think that... I think the old like knee-jerk reaction to creating like a new Star Wars story is to like put it out on the big screen. Mm-hmm. And I don't think for Solo, I think it would benefit from being like a TV show.
Me too.
So, take what The Mandalorian is and what like Kenobi's going to be and do that with Alden Ehrenreich. Yeah,
I'm completely with you. I think a season is the best avenue to make the story of young Han Solo and Lando and Chewbacca happen. I think that type of story, again, looking back to Star Wars Underworld, like a crime syndicate story being told in a serial weekly television event, I think is much more fitting than a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, you could just put so much more into the TV show than you can in the movie. Yeah, it would give you so much more opportunity to like really flesh out all these characters. And the casting was just like way too good in Solo for them to just never do anything with that again.
Yeah. Speaking of casting, are there characters in Solo that you really want to see again in Solo 2? Like, I could see Emilia Clarke come back. I feel like she's pretty integral to the story they set up there for Kira and Maul. Lando, I think you could probably go either way on, but I'd want to see him come back. I think seeing Donald Glover get another shot to be Lando would be great, because I don't remember if you felt the same way as I did, but when we watched Solo, I was kind of surprised that I thought Alden had more freedom to make Han his own than Donald Glover had with Lando. Like, I'd want to see him be more Donald Glover-y,
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes me think, like, was that because Donald Glover, like, felt like he had to, like, emulate Billy D. Williams?
Maybe.
Like I don't know what his thought process was, because, like, you could definitely make the argument that, like, Alden Ehrenreich had to be a certain way, right?
Yeah.
But, like, he kind of put his own spin on the character.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have to agree with you, like, I wasn't, like, super impressed with, like, Donald Glover's rendition of Lando. I mean, I like it.
Yeah, I love the casting. I think that's a great choice, and I want to see him really come into his own as Lando, and I feel like a sequel could give us that, you know?
Right. I mean, yeah. The thing is like I just wasn't impressed with like where they went with him in the movie. Like, I don't mean that like in the sense that I didn't like it, but yeah, I think giving him another shot at it, like in a TV show, may actually be beneficial for his portrayal of it.
Yeah.
I don't know though if I would want to see him like really take like a front seat role, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where I land on that. I think it would be interesting to just see like, you know, maybe he's in like a few episodes.
Yeah.
But like for the most part, Han Solo like does his own thing, and like Chewbacca, like they find new people and like they introduce new characters, and I definitely want to see what happens with Kira though and Maul.
For sure. And I could see Lando being sort of in a role that he was in Empire, of like Han shows up on his doorstep being like, hey buddy, I need help.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's in for like 2 episodes or something.
Right.
You know who I'd really want to see? Because like, talking narrative, right? Solo tees up this gang war, this these families of crime syndicates being at odds with each other, the job on Tatooine. Like, you know who I kind of want to see thrown into the mix here?
Who?
Hondo.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, actually.
That could be cool. Throw him in with the crew, have him and Han team up.
That would be actually that's yeah. I mean, I think it would work because like they're all smugglers and stuff. And yeah, I do like that character of Hondo. And
yeah, me
too. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. The thing is like I'm not sure what kind of emphasis you would like. Do you see this show being more like here's Han and Chewbacca's smuggler adventures, like serialized and like really like inconsequential, or like do you see it taking more of like a dramatic like like Chewbacca and Han Solo like do like fun smuggler adventures, but it's like mostly set on like the drama and the tension of like Kira and like Han and...
I think you start the season with teeing up an eventual confrontation with Maul, and because like I haven't seen Rebels yet, so I don't really know where his character goes there. I know what happens to him in the end of it, but like I don't know with the Crimson Dawn, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I don't know where that plot line goes, but like
it's not really fleshed out that much.
Okay, so there's wiggle room here. We have space to explore.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe set up like a job that Han has to do at the start of the season involving the Crimson Dawn. Maybe Jabba is like, hey, I want this guy, I want his empire to fall, you know, and like that's how he meets Jabba, and then run a few jobs throughout the season. Maybe they're somewhat related, maybe they're job of the week, but you're building, right? Like you're building more stuff, more about Han and Kira, more about her role with Maul. And then at the end of it, I don't know when it would end up in terms of his Rebels life, but like I think similar to Mandalorian, like you plant seeds and then you have your fun little episodes and then you return to those seeds by the end.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that'd probably be a good structure for it. I mean, do you see it being like more of just like a 1 season thing, or like the scope of it expand?
Honestly, I'd love to, if the season of Solo 2 that I'm envisioning and hoping for works out, I'd love to see 2 seasons. Like I'd love to see sort of them take essentially a trilogy to tell this story of the Star Wars Underworld through Han's perspective.
Yeah.
Because I think
Solo 1 more like a prologue.
Sure, yeah, like that's the fun, fluffy one of like, the Castle Run and how we got the Falcon, and then season 2 explores more of his relationship with maybe show how he meets Jabba, and then season 2 is mostly on Maul and Kira, and then maybe season 3 is strictly like a Hutt season.
Dang. Man, it's like literally just writing itself.
Yeah, I think because the thing is, you look back to Underworld, right? Han was supposed to be in Underworld according to that show Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's a great character. Like you and I are both on the same page with Alden's take being kind of underrated.
Oh, super underrated. I mean, like he really made that character his own.
Yeah, like I think exploring the Star Wars underworld from the eras we're familiar with, because we haven't gotten explored much at all, really. I think exploring it through the lens of this great take on Han Solo, there's a lot of potential, and you can really explore a lot of the intricacies of the Crimson Dawn, the Hutts. What was the other gang?
The
The Black Sun,
I have no idea.
maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. But it makes me. What were you gonna say?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Um, man, what I forget what I was gonna say. Sorry.
It's all good. Do you think that, like, it's realistic to maybe look into this fan campaign and be hopeful that we get back to Solo? Because, like, where's your head at there? Do you think that Disney would look to stuff like Kenobi and Ahsoka and maybe Solo to continue exploring the Skywalker saga?
I think that it has a possibility of being made, though, like not anytime soon.
Okay.
I think that they're definitely like focusing more on like Kenobi and like Ahsoka and like all that kind of stuff right now.
Yeah.
But the problem is like they would need to make moves on it soon because like Alden Ehrenreich, you know, is only getting older. Like not to be like, but it's real. Like they only have so much time to like really make this thing start to move. It seems like the guy who plays Chewbacca is in on it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. He loves playing Chewbacca. If you don't follow him online, I recommend it. I can find his @ but he's a great follow. He's very still active with the Star Wars fandom. He loves being Chewbacca.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it just I feel like, you know, they're gonna have to get to like Marvel levels of like production before we see something like this. Like, you know how Marvel like they put out like 5 things a year.
Yeah.
But like with Star Wars we get like maybe one.
Yeah, and honestly, it seems like they've been. I feel like when Solo came out, they were chasing that sort of level of production, but after the backlash of Solo, after Last Jedi as well, they pumped the brakes hard.
Yeah, they did.
Right? So, like, if you see a world where it only works if they're on Marvel's level, do you think that means we don't get it? Or do you think they pursue the consistency of Marvel but on the side of like TV where it could work better?
Honestly, like I don't think it's likely that we'll see it just because I think they'll probably want to like focus their resources on like other things. It seems like Disney's trying to like differentiate themselves from like old Star Wars into like whatever new thing that they're creating.
Sure.
And the more that they linger on like these old characters and these old time periods, the less they're able to like do the more original stuff that it seems like they're thirsty to do. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to do that in the future. It doesn't count it out at all. I just think that it's less likely than other things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say that it's less likely than, say, a random other series that explores the underworld, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, there's a name there, right? Like, the name Han Solo will sell, right? Like,
fair.
If you want to explore the Star Wars underworld, if you want to explore the history of the Hutt family, their rise to power, Maul's role, like, I don't think you pursue that in something not following up Solo, right? Like, if you want to flesh out Maul, because people love Maul now, right? People love Maul after Clone Wars.
It's so fun. It's so funny how public opinion just like completely changes.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
But yeah, people love Maul.
So like, if they want to see that character fleshed out more, sure they could do a book, sure they could do a comic, but like, if they made a series, I don't think it would be an animated series about Maul. That would be cool, but like, I really think that if we do see another series exploring the Skywalker saga, I do think it will probably be Solo. Because remember there was like the Russian Doll writer producer is working on like a female centric series that takes place in a new era.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the next new project that we've heard of, you know, like Cassian, Kenobi, Mando, and then this new era show.
Yeah, but it makes me think that like they're really like pushing towards like that new original sort of like strain of Star Wars that Disney is looking to do. I mean, I'm not trying to like argue with like what you're saying, but it's just a lot of the evidence seems to point that they're like trying to branch off, you know.
They definitely are. I think there's not a hesitation, but I do think there is some sort of security with the Skywalker era that they would like to have in their back pocket.
Yeah, yeah.
Evidence would be Mando getting a third season, which probably won't be, depending on if the virus situation continues, maybe a 2022 season, but like Kenobi after that, Cassian after that, maybe Kenobi and Cassian are one season shows, and then filling the void of the Skywalker saga Star Wars story, maybe that's where Solo 2 fits in, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I really, honestly, anything's possible, you know?
Yeah.
And it's possible that it's already in production, we just don't know about it.
Yeah, imagine if that was a Celebration announcement.
Yeah, that would be crazy. People would go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a market there for it. Like, people are obviously super passionate about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think like Han Solo, like there are just a lot of stories to tell there. So
for sure. And worth updating right now, 25,000 tweets currently, hashtag make Solo 2 happen. So gotta pump those numbers up, people.
If that doesn't get that damn mouse's attention, I don't know what will.
I just honestly I hope that the people who worked on Solo and like the team that had a good time making that movie and saw the fan opinion on it change, I hope that similar to sort of, I guess, the way someone like Zack Snyder looked at the staying power of the Snyder Cut thing, like maybe it takes a while, but maybe we get there eventually. Because I do think, like we've been saying, I think there's potential here, and Disney's aware of that. Lucasfilm is aware of that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, what?
Go ahead, please.
No. I wasn't going to really say anything important.
Okay, I was just going to say, final question for you about Solo, too.
Yeah.
Ideally, what would you want them to focus on, I guess? Like, would you want it to be a direct follow-up in terms of the threads we leave off on the Tatooine reference, Maul, or would you want it to be more grand scope, maybe sort of emulating what Underworld was gonna be? Like, maybe the story of Solo 2 is told in a series, but it's not just about Han. Like, maybe Han gets 3 episodes, and then a couple other episodes are some other bounty hunter or some other smuggler in that era in relation to this whole Hutt scheme or something.
Okay, so I actually never really liked the fact that they name dropped essentially like Jabba the Hutt at the end of Solo. Yeah. So like in a way, I wish that they could like just ignore that, you know, and like never do anything with it. I find that would probably be hard to do. If they were to make like a Solo 2. Mm-hmm. I'm personally more interested in like all the crime syndicate stuff, just because it hasn't been fleshed out as much in the canon, and I think it'd be cool to see that on like a visual medium, with like live action like Maul and stuff. I really honestly find like the whole Han and Kira relationship to be super compelling, and I would want to see that more than really like whatever's going on with Jabba the Hutt. In a way, like I always like the fact how you never really know who Jabba the Hutt is, or you're not supposed to really know who Jabba the Hutt is until Return of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. So keeping that kind of like mysterious, I think is cool. Yeah. But like I said, because they teed it up so well at the end of the movie, I'm sure that would be really difficult to do.
I mean, like, you could realistically, I think, tell a story where Jabba's in the background of like, you can name drop him, like Han saying like whatever the plot we're exploring with Kira and Maul with Han. It's like, oh yeah, we got to make a stop because I'm picking up a shipment for Jabba or something like that. You know, like just keep him in that role he was sort of in 4 and 5 of like Han is still under his thumb or tail. But like,
yeah,
you know, like I think there's ways to write around it where we could explore with some leniency of what they tee up. But
yeah, I mean, what about you? What would you rather see it like focus on?
I don't know, because like part of me really would like to sort of see Job of the Week kind of thing, but I don't think that's the direction that Star Wars TV will take, even though Mando danced around that a bit. Like, I think it would probably be fleshing out more Maul and Kira. I think Maul and Kira would have pretty big roles, and I do think Jabba would probably be back burner. Honestly, I could even see the story of Solo 2 across a TV season mostly carried by Kira, maybe, because like obviously she doesn't stick around long, but like it seems like she has a pretty big role to play in terms of the Crimson Dawn and Maul and where he ends up.
Definitely. Yeah, I think like that really is like the main thread, you know. That's really like she's really what connects Han with like this broader and like greater story that I think they can tell with like all the crime syndicates and stuff. I mean, like I said, if you know, if I could get my way, I'd rather see like a story about Kira and like the crime syndicates. Though it wouldn't be a Han Solo story without them, you know, sprinkling in every once in a while like Job of the Week kind of thing.
Yeah, just give me one episode with Hondo and Han arguing in the cockpit of the Falcon.
Honestly, there's no reason why Hondo can't like, you know, go to Dathomir and like hang out with Maul or whatever.
Yeah, why not? Well, they got beef now, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
So yeah, maybe like if we're trying to take down Maul, maybe we recruit Hondo for the season.
Honestly, the threads are really lining up. I think that would be a pretty cool. Like, I don't know, like Hondo tries to get revenge or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I think regardless, in the next maybe 5 years, we do see more of the Underworld and Maul stuff, but it would be great if it was through Soul 2.
Yeah, it would be.
So, do you have any final thoughts on this whole shebang?
What do you think about a Maul TV show?
Dude, I'd love it. I don't know if it would happen.
Why not?
Because live action, I really wonder what approach you take. Like, if you did live action, it would probably be Ray Park. Would you have Sam Witwer do the, like, dub it, like how Ray Park was dubbed in episode 1?
No,
I feel like you need that.
Ray Park he did the voice in episode 1.
Are you sure? I'm pretty sure somebody dubbed over it.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like,
I know
it might have even been him, but like there's ADR going on when he talks to Sidious.
Are you sure? I know that in Solo, Sam Witwer dubbed over.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Now okay. I'm like really questioning myself, but
like maybe we get a season of an animated Maul series or something. But I would love to see sort of the gap of where he leaves off now and where he ends up in Clone or Rebels.
You're right about the whole episode 1 thing. He was dubbed over.
Okay, yeah, because that scene when it's them, I think on Coruscant, and he's like, "At last we'll have our revenge." Like, that's not what those lips are doing.
Yeah, no. The thing is I guess like it makes sense that he doesn't talk because like I didn't even realize that it wasn't Ray Park.
Yeah, but yeah, I feel like right now where we're at, centering a television series, unless it's like a limited series, like 3 episodes limited series, I don't know if they'd focus it on a Sith or Empire character right now.
Right, yeah. So, I don't know. Fun fact about Solo, I just looked it up. Ray Park obviously does, you know, he acts as Maul, but Sam Witwer provides the voice. The person who did the original voice acting for Maul in the Phantom Menace was brought in to record Maul's dialogue, but his performance was dropped for what it was.
Interesting.
This is that's interesting.
It's funny too that Maul kind of came into being a Frankenstein character, sort of how Vader was in the originals.
It's funny. It's crazy, but interesting.
For sure, yeah. So there's definitely so much potential here. I feel like someday, at some point, we'll get a follow-up in some way, even if it's not about Han, just about Maul and Kira, but I don't think it's out of the question, and we #certified believe that Solo 2 should happen.
Yeah, definitely. #make Solo 2 happen.
#make Solo 2 happen. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Mike, if there's anything you want to shout out, feel free to do so.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, feel free, @Mike P. Connors.
Very nice. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @ChrisNBuckley. Instagram is the same. This show right here, if you're watching on youtube.com/joyclicks, there's other stuff coming out. We have a game podcast that comes out every week. Streams are moving to YouTube now.
Officially.
Yes. Video game streams are on YouTube now.
No more Twitch.
I'm doing Sundays on Twitch just because I'm in the middle of a full playthrough, and I was like, I'll just keep that one on Twitch. But like the random one-offs, maybe the Star Wars games, are on the YouTube channel now.
Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah. So look forward to that. More of those in the future, and some interesting future elements for this show. Like we said, the book club is something we're kicking around, and we are trying to figure out a Rebels schedule as well. So look forward to that in the future. Yeah,
absolutely. It's going to be fun. JoyClicks going on for another 33 episodes.
At least, because we got to hit over 66.
Literally. And if this quarantine's still happening by episode 66, I'll break it. I'll drive to your house, Christian.
All right, we'll see what happens.
All right.
But yeah, that's going to do it. If you're listening to us on podcast services, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, a variety of others. If you enjoy the show, rating and reviewing would be very nice of you. Would help us out a ton. And if you want Solo 2 to happen, tweet it.
#make Solo 2 happen.
It works. But here's the thing. Final word. If you're going to do a movement like this, if you're going to do a hashtag blah, 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 don't be mean about it. Because I've seen so many people, Mike. I've seen so many Snyder Cut people act horribly online to people.
Yeah, I think I'd like to imagine Jedi Nights as a place of positive Star Wars discussion.
For sure.
I think you and I have our disagreements and we have our opinions on things, but we keep it civil. And there's no reason why people can't keep it civil on the internet. So stop being children. That's what I have to say about that.
You put it perfectly, Mike. So until then, until Solo 2 happens, we're fine. Everything's fine. How are you?
May the Force be with you.
General Kenobi.